And we are live. My name is John Paul Berg, and this is Dumb the Wiser. Today I'm joined by my friend and returning guest, Mr. Dale Richardson. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing all right. It's Monday. It's raining like crazy and it's cold. That's
Yeah,
so I'm all right.
we make the best out of it, man.
Yes.
So we were a bit late starting. We wanted to start at 3 p.m. There's some slight video malfunctions on Dale's end. So if his video is skipping, just try your best to not let it distract you, and we'll jump right into the conversation. Going to keep it very casual. We're going to talk about solutions. So with that said, Dale, I'll throw it over to you, and you could start us off.
Yeah, I mean at the end of the day our country is going down in a very bad way. I mean we're entering that recession and so forth. And our government is still, I mean, they're not working for us, right? And so we have to do something about it because I mean complying our way out of this situation is never going to work, right? We have to hold the government accountable. That means we have to get up and do something. And, people want to say, oh, well, they're never going to do anything. They don't do anything. We can't do anything. Well, it's like, well, if that was the case, why did they spend so much time trying to silence us? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. They want us to feel ineffectual and absent recourse. Because at the end of the day, they don't fear my voice or your voice per se, but what they fear more than anything is our voices. So we really have to, I believe, be pragmatic in our approach and look to organize grassroots movements, clubs, societies, organizations. And I just think that's the way. Politics itself is so seemingly unapproachable. Like it's so owned. Like you said, they don't serve us, they serve people above them. We don't have public servants as much as political constructs.
Oh, yes. Like I was just on a podcast from a guy in the States, and he was saying that when the people are attacking you, they go at the people that are most effective, and they start getting rid of them first. So when you're watching people getting ridiculous amounts of attacks and suppression, is because the people who are on the wrong side of the argument think that they're an effective target, so they don't want them actually to do anything. And so we can't sit down and look at a person saying, "Oh, well, they're getting attacked, so I'm going to stay back and leave them alone." No, you should be actually helping those people, because those are the people that would be able to help us all achieve the things that we want. And we have to be able to work together. And this is the thing that we're seeing a problem with, people not wanting to work together. And even, for example, in the independent media, you're seeing more people spending more time mowing each other down than focusing on the bigger problems at hand. And that has to change.
Yeah, we're absolutely hyper focused on our differences. The tribalism has never been to this extent. Ideologically, the left right thing is worse than ever, and we're getting nowhere on it. Even racialism in Canada is huge right now, and it's like I've been discussing this lately. It's almost like problem, reaction, solution. So, like, the problem is weaponized mass migration, and they know with the radical demographic shift that inevitably it's going to see the emergence of like white identitarianism and
Mm-hmm.
white nationalism. And then their solution, if that gets violent or leads to civil strife with some of these migrant communities, that's their solution. That's going to be like sweeping new authoritarian laws and kind of necessitate the totalitarian system that they want to push us into.
Well, yes, and I let's actually talk about some of that, the white nationalism and so forth. You have to sit down and look at how this whole mass migration began. And it was like, it began because Canadians started to drink the Kool-Aid about like how families should go, and they started to do things like, for example, the feminism and so forth, where you saw the birth rate fall off the cliff. This is then allows the globalist government with guys like Trudeau's father, right, or his stepfather, to come in and start bringing in this whole multiculturalism policy, which started out with Europeans first, and then in the 80s it started to shift over to everyone else, because as Europe birth rate was declining, they weren't bringing in enough people. So they're like, okay, we need to start looking at other places. And then they started to bring people, first they used to bring people from the Commonwealth, which was a normal thing to have movement within the empire. So that was not a big deal. But when they just opened the door to just anybody else and started mass importing them, they're like, okay, they have a problem. And then yes, do we want criminals coming in? No, we don't. But this isn't about race as more it is about enslavement of the entire people using different elements so that we would fight each other. Because, for example, a lot of the Indians that are coming over, I knew guys that I grew up with that were Indians that were born in Canada and so forth. They don't like the guys that are coming over. They're like, they know exactly what's going on. And for example, like their parents or grandparents who emigrated from them, they know exactly what's happening and why they're bringing these people, and they don't want them more than almost anybody else. So
yeah, it's created in Canada. We're totally balkanized now. Like some of our urban centers, Canadians are like around 40% compared to various communities, and they're living in enclaves. There's no assimilation. The pace itself ensures that they won't assimilate, like these various peoples that are coming. Lots from India, Africa, lots from the Philippines and places like this. And like the people are not where we should put the blame. Like even if you're against it all vehemently, like you got to look at who's facilitating this migration. And I view it as I think it's financial. This is not like they want us to get confused and start looking and dividing based upon racial lines, because that foments more division. But at the end of the day, it's like we're interchangeable economic units. So they throw the all of the things that they're doing to us, their policies, the attacks on the family, the economy getting worse, that led to declining birth rates. And I mean, in order for mammals to not be fruitful, we have to be under captivity. Like when you put a mammal in a zoo, they stop having babies. Beyond that, we just naturally have babies. So I mean, the abuse that we were put through, psychologically and even economically, is what led to these declining birth rates.
yeah,
Then instead of like a natalist policies to incentivize the working class to have babies again, give them some financial help on that to inspire them to have more babies, we turn around and we just start importing labor.
yes, and part of the importation, I was talking to somebody about this. For example, the labor trafficking issue in the States, it was brought on a lot by having people to become nannies for childcare. Childcare is something that where a lot of people had illegal immigrants doing this, and they would import people in doing this because they wanted to go out and do things. We need to rethink the way that we're doing things altogether, because they're making the economics of things to drive in a certain way, and then they are using people as consumers. And if you're a consumer, you're being led by whatever makes you feel good and what they pump down your throat and tell you that you need to do. If you don't, you're going to be like a terrible person, or never going to be what you need to be if you don't have it. We need to start learning how to live with less and forget about the government policies, because if the people or the media or whoever, because if you have a people that are going to start doing things differently, they'll adapt. The government will adapt, or the media will adapt. The big companies will adapt, because if you're not going to spend your money there, they're going to have to shape up or ship out.
Yeah, it's like they've desanctified humanity. Once we started moving away from religion in the 60s, we started moving away from Christianity. You started to see this change culturally. And I really think that's one of the seminal things, because when you desanctify humanity, then we are interchangeable economic units. It's like what I'm saying is like we're not so much citizens of nations with rights. What we are in the West, and I think this is true right across the Western democracies, we're more indentured employees of corporations. Our countries are like corporate entities or economic commerce zones. Nations, as we think of it, are not as relevant as we believe they are.
Well, they're not, because they use the financial policy and using the money to dictate what happens. And when you control the money, you control a country. And people were saying this for a long time, and this is really what happens. And what when we saw this move of urbanization, and we started to see a heavy weighting on urbanization, where most of the people are in cities and so forth, you began to see a very strong shift. Because if you have a when it was 50-50 or more people on the rural side as opposed to in the cities, you didn't have this type of stranglehold, because a lot of people across that were farming and doing all these things, they were self-sufficient, so they were hard to control. And so the more dependence that we get on companies and other places for our daily living, the more of a stranglehold that these people have on us. Because if you can't grow your food, then you're going to have to go to the grocery store. And if you don't have money for the grocery store, then you don't eat. So you're forced to go to your 9 to 5 job or whatever else like that in order to sustain yourself. Because if you get out of favor, you can't live by yourself. You can't cut down your trees and build a house and all that kind of stuff, because you're stuck doing whatever they provide for you. And that's where, when you lose that self-sufficiency, become dependent on them, this is where they can drive the prices of things up.
Yes, we've been infantilized to the point where we're dependent or reliant on this system. Many of us entirely. The the urbanization is definitely relevant for sure in regards to this. But again, man, it's what's the answer? Like, I believe our biggest problem is monetary policy. I think we need transformational monetary reform, because what you were talking about there is scarcity.
Yes.
Scarcity is the ingredient that keeps the whole labor colony in motion. And
Yes.
if they let us attain some level of wealth, or if we lived in something more close to abundance, we wouldn't get up every day and keep their data centers being constructed. We're not going to construct their data centers, because we know that goes against our sovereignty, essentially, individually.
Well, and a lot of this is like the scarcity. On top of that is fear and avoiding threat. Because, like, I don't, who Chase Hughes is, the guy who does the neurologist that used to work for the CIA, that did psyops and so forth.
Yeah, I do know this guy.
And he talks about how people avoid threat and so forth. And people don't want to feel good more so than they want to avoid threat, because threat is bad, right? And we shouldn't be running to threat. I mean, it's not reasonable, but at a certain point in time, there is some threat that you're going to have to face, right? But we have a people that are avoiding threat, and women are going to avoid threat much higher than men will, because of the nature of the way that we are. And so we have to start rethinking about this, because we can't, especially as men, we can't be the ones avoiding threat all the time. We have to take the risk. This is how civilizations, exploration, and all these things were primarily done by men. We risked our lives to make better things for our family and a better world. But now we're running away, avoiding everything, and we can't do that. So these are things that we have to fundamentally make these changes, right? Because the government is never going to do this for us. So we have to start doing it for ourselves, because they're always going to foster us to just herd us into places and say, okay, we'll promise you this safety, but they're really doing nothing.
Mm. It's the globalist NGOs that incentivize a lot of this. Same with the feminism. This is what we talked about in the past, and that leads to what? Well, that leads to the emasculation of men. American men have been emasculated in many regards. And I'm not saying that there's not men out there, but the rate of men compared to boys, when I see young people now, I'm in my 40s, but when I see dudes in their 20s now, I look at them and I think, you wouldn't have survived in my generation. They're weak, they're effeminate. Even the guys that are like, I'm not saying they're homosexual, I'm saying they're like overtly effeminate. It's like it's getting that bad that men are actually having these effeminate characteristics, I'm noticing. Unless I'm going nuts.
No, it's this is true, and it's especially so here in Canada. In Canada, I mean, I look, even some of the people in my generation, I looked at them and I say, what happened to you? What happened to you over the last 20 something years? Because even some of the stuff that I taught, like we would sit down and like, had a certain stance, you look at them and they're no longer this way. And it's like, so then what happened? Now I can understand why this younger generation is the way that it is, because even some people in my generation have fallen off the cliff. Like they're just like something's just different. And so we need to address these because the if yeah, I mean, we have to fix ourselves, because the first thing that we have to do is start making changes within ourselves. If we want solutions, we have to begin to just make that decision in our minds that we need to do something different, right? And the question is what? Go ahead.
And I think so many people, even people that are apparently would be self-described as being awake to everything, like they're waiting for someone else to do something.
Yes.
And they have to take an initiative and go out. It's like I've been saying, like start an organization, network, get on social media if you're a good speaker or you're a good writer. But get involved directly and start speaking the truth. And the more people that do this, and this is why they're suppressing us, this is why we're a threat, is because courage is contagious. History's
Yes.
proved this time and time again. Once people start making those initial strides to pushing back against this in a substantive regard, you're going to see other people join them. So it's like everyone has to stop waiting and has to start creating their own change.
Yeah, yes, they do. And one of the things, like kind of what we like about stuff for solutions. My daughter and I think there was about 21 of us. We signed a petition for redress of grievances, and it was taken into Washington, D.C. My friend Adriana DiCiaccio, she ended up taking it to Representative Anna Paulina Luna and spoke with her and so forth. And then it went to several other congressional offices. I think it was Mike Lawler and Eli Crane, and then it went to Troy Downing in Montana, and then it went to I can't think of the woman's name, like Betty McCallum, I believe is the 4th district. She's a Democrat. That didn't kind of went a little bit sideways, but people are beginning to come forward and deal with this. And I've been talking to guys in the States about this because they understand this a lot more than we do in Canada about how this works. And so they're beginning to start taking these things and understanding what the outcome is, because if the government is left the way it is, we're all going to end up in gulags, and we're going to all end up as like wage slaves, even to a worse degree. So what has to be done? Well, you have to hold the government accountable. This is without question. If we leave the government as it is, nothing will get done. And I don't care what anybody says, that has to be done. Now, there are ways to deal with it that are more effective than others, because if you go and do certain things, you're going to get arrested. But if you do it in a manner that you're following the lawful pathways, you can put a tremendous amount of public pressure on the government to make changes. And this is something that we need to do.
Yeah, it's politics is downstream of culture, so we have to make some cultural changes. Grassroots organizations, I think, is an interesting way to pressure them. But like, as for politicians, like I have another show called The Philosopher, the Stoic, and the Teddy Bear, and before that was deboosted, because everything's deboosted now. We were getting 3,000 live viewers, 10 to 15,000 views on our episodes, so we started to have bigger guests. And we had several politicians come on, former MPs. We had former MP Derek Sloan on. We had former MPP Richard, Mr. Hillier. I forget his first name. He's
Randy Hillier.
Randy Hillier. Yes, he's a character. I really like Randy. But a common theme that we're hearing is that once you endeavor as a public servant at any level of government, provincially or federally, once you endeavor to actually be a voice for your constituency, they push you out. This party system gets in and they try to whip you on the party line. And if they can't, they just push you out. Or they'll defang you. They won't let you in the committees. They won't let you have any say in regarding policy or anything. It's like the in crowd, and they exclude you. And then the minute they can, they'll go as far as to primary you.
Yes,
Get you out.
this is a problem. This again, I'm going to keep beating this dead horse. This comes up to the people, because politicians, at the end of the day, they will do what's in their best interests, right? The problem is that we're not giving them enough resistance, and this is it. And we have to make changes. And this is again where I'm going to sit down and kind of going back to the racialization of things. This is where this becomes problematic, right? Because I look, for example, on social media, a lot of people talk going this, that, and the other about race. So when I look at the situation that's happening here with white people, and it's unfortunate, but it's not as much racism as you really think it is, because you have to look at the government as the one who are implementing this, and these policies were done by mostly other white people at the beginning. It may feel like racism, but it's actually directed to do something that it's not. Because when you look at it, the government that was mostly white was the ones who started to do this to the people. It's a completely different agenda. It's about division. Because when you look at the other racial groups, right? So you look at some of the natives, and then you look at, say, the black people, which have been suffering a lot of this discrimination from a long time. These are the people who have dealt with these successfully out of these different groups, are the ones that people want to look to now, because they understand how to deal with this Marxist agenda, because this has been in the black communities and the native communities and so forth for a hell of a lot longer than it was for the general public. But when they start flooding in all of these people and they start making it about race, and you see some of these guys on their soapboxes, yes, they're upset about things, and they start focusing on race, then the people that are there that help you then understand how to deal with this situation, you're not getting the help. Every group has something to add to this situation that we all need. And the way that when people are staying fractured, where it serves the globalist element. This is like, when I look at this is like one of the most ridiculous things that we're doing to make these guys get ahead. We're doing the work for them, and it drives me nuts, because at the end of the day, I don't care what race my neighbor is. I'm caring about the billionaires that are trying to make us all slaves, right?
Yeah,
As long
it's part of the agenda, man. It's divide and conquer. It's like I say, there's a multiple of objectives that were accomplished regarding the mass migration into Canada. But number one, and you could read history about this, one of the most destabilizing factors for any society is radical demographic shifts. Like when you import, millions of people from different cultures and different countries within a short period of time, like they know that that's going to have a destabilization effect. But I mean, what people have to realize is this is a problem with finance. That's who's facilitating this. It's not even being done by our governments. Our governments are complicit in this, but there's a supranational structure above the government. And that's international finance, and that's who's making these decisions. Why are they doing this? Because they want to cause division, they want to cause destabilization, because they want to bring about a new system. Because the old Ponzi scheme of fiat currency in the state we're in, every country in the West is trillions of dollars in debt. I mean, it's not going to last much longer. So that's where I think a lot of it comes from.
Yes, and this is where we have to talk about the people who we support and put in government has to change, because money doesn't make you do anything. Sure, it can help sway your decision, but at the end of the day, we need to have people that have principle and backbone that go into government. Because if somebody came to me and said, okay, go ahead, betray your country, and I'm going to give you this money, I'd tell them where to go, right? The answer is no, because I understand what this will do, and eventually this is going to come back at my doorstep. And why would I want to do that for somebody who wants to destroy the country that I'm living in? And what's going to be left for my children? Nothing, right? Because if I don't understand where they're thinking about their immediate need in the moment. It's like a drug addict. You're thinking about your next fix. You're only concerned about doing that thing at this point in time, and not thinking in the future, because all those people that are in Ottawa and in all the provincial governments, they are all doing the same thing. They're acting like drug addicts. They're not thinking about the long-term effects of what may even happen to them. They're just thinking about the here and now.
I don't even necessarily think that they're all incentivized by their own greed. There's a lot of that in politics, obviously. We
Yes,
all know that. But I think a lot of them are put in positions where they know to exist in this climate, to exist in this level of a corrupt system, they have to go along with it. And they feel that pressure because it's like I said, every politician I spoke to that has integrity was pushed out. Every single one of them. So it's how do we get this systemic change? I agree with you. We definitely require men of resolve and men of integrity that are willing to say no to these people, but we have that. We had that in a Randy Hillier. We had that in a Derek Sloan. And the party system is so corrupted by the financial system above it that they just squeeze you right out.
but this is where the people have to put pressure onto the government, onto the parties, because you have to sit down and look at the way this works, because it doesn't matter about money. We all have, like the guy said, we are all there to avoid threat. Now, when it comes to dealing with politicians, politicians are the guys that you have the most access to, because you can't go and pressure the police. They're just going to arrest you. You can't go pressure the courts. They're going to throw you into contempt. But the elected officials, they're the ones that you're supposed to have the most access to. So why are people not giving them the gears on everything that they're doing? Why are they not showing up to their constituency offices on a regular basis and dealing with this? So that when that person shows their face, that they're going to have people going, why aren't you dealing with this? Sticking cameras in their face, because in Canada, they got no right to privacy whatsoever. You can stick a camera in front of anybody. I've talked to the RCMP about this. They're like, you can film any public servant and they can't tell you no. None whatsoever. So why are people not doing this to put the pressure on them to make their lives miserable? Because this is really what has to happen, because they have to start thinking twice when they're coming to work, knowing that they're going to get flooded with phone calls, they're going to get flooded with people showing up going, what are you doing? Because then they're going to start thinking that, okay, if I keep doing this and openly defying these people, then consequences are going to come. And this is why you need to have men there, because look at the last time they started to just disregard a bunch of men collectively. Look, it's the United States 250 years ago. What did they do? They wrote the Declaration of Independence. Like, they sat down and they said our humble petitions were met with repeated injury, and that was after they went through the courts and stuff. The last thing they did was we petitioned our government for redress of grievances. And then what did they do? They penned the Declaration of Independence, and then they had to fight a revolutionary war. Now, I don't want to go and have war. I'm not advocating for that, but we need to take all of the steps to put pressure on the government. And I've looked in through some of the guys who are dealing with Commonwealth countries and governments across the globe around the turn of the 20th century and a little bit before, and they said there's nothing better than public pressure. And they were saying this in constitutional monarchies.
I agree with that 100%. There's a reciprocal, perpetual dynamic between the people and a ruling class. We forgot how to put pressure on it, but even in a straight monarchy, you got to keep the peasants fed or they will revolt. Peasant revolts have been a problem for the ruling class all through history, going right back to Rome. You know what I mean? But society functions better, especially one that's predicated on some aspect of democracy, when the public servants fear the people, not the bankers above them. So we want them to be more afraid of the public reaction than they will get from their financial overlords, essentially.
Yes, and this is this is where the people that can do something, they need to start, right? Because I'm a mechanical engineering technologist. I used to work as a heavy duty mechanic. I'm a practical application guy. I understand theory, but I also understand that theory is no good if you can come into practice. And this is one of the things that I have when I deal with a lot of intellectual people, is that a vast majority of them cannot translate from theory to practice. And this is the big disconnect, right? Like, this is why we have to work with a bunch of people. I can understand, like, I mean, I understand the practical nature of doing stuff like from being like a heavy duty mechanic. Sometimes we had to just get something patched up enough to get it to where we need to go. For example, we're in the middle of northern Alberta. We had a piece of machinery that was it was not able to move, right? So what did we have to do? We had to basically weld up the tracks so that we could get it to somewhere where it could get towed onto a truck to get taken back. Otherwise, you abandon that piece of machinery that's like almost $1 million, some of them a little bit more. You can't afford to do that. So we have to start thinking in that mentality. And this is why we have to work together with groups, and we need to put away our pride, and especially men, because we're designed to do things. We're the guys that are supposed to go and come together to protect our communities. Find the best people that you can work with and start doing something. We have to do this in local action, and we're going to have to do it, like, yes, over the country, but we have to start in our local areas. And that's really it. We have to.
And just starting it creates that snowball effect. Because, like I said earlier, like courage is contagious. And when people see people being courageous and speaking against this, forming groups, doing door knocking campaigns, or like having a club where you're inviting people from the community in to focus on some of these issues, then they're more inclined to do that themselves.
Yes, and we also have to take this image of what a criminal looks like. And this is why they love discrimination, because people will just like look at a certain thing and think that's the criminals. Do you know what the highest percentage of people that are criminals on this planet? They're billionaires and politicians.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to go with the percentage of criminal behavior is the highest when you have politicians. The more, and this ain't nothing about race. You put anybody in those positions that should not be there, that do not have integrity, and you're going to breed crime, right? And that's where you take away accountability. Criminal behavior will always happen without consequences. And so we have to start thinking back to basics. This is like cause and effect. If you take away consequences from anybody, you will breed crime. I don't care who it is.
A rule without a reprimand is not a rule, it's a suggestion.
Yes.
So that it's very obvious, and we know this inherently, but it's the people that kind of lost it. And I don't believe we just woke up one day and stopped scrutinizing our public servants. I don't think we just woke up one day and became super feminine. I think this was a progressive strategy. I really think it went into overdrive in the 60s with a lot of the movements that happened there. It was a subversion away from God, which makes us more receptive to a lot of these new age type philosophies. And we've lost ourselves to the point where we're very infantilized.
Yes. And this is where, I was talking with a pastor here in Alberta, and we want to work with the younger men, to give them direction, to give them the tools that they need. Because whereas when anybody says, I've been through hell. And I look at a guy, for example, like Kirk Reese, who has PTSD and he got completely destroyed. Not the same guy. Even over the last couple of years that I've noticed, I've seen, you can't do things to people like this, right? And I look at other people who've done through this, and I'm like, it's the grace of God that I'm not like a basket case. But at least in this situation, I can help other people that are dealing with these tough situations on what to do to not end up like a basket case, because everybody's getting in some kind of bad situation. It's all in varying degrees, but you want to look to the people that have experience. And like, for example, like the guys like Randy Hillier that you were mentioning, and other people that have been in these situations. We need to draw on the experience of all of these people that have been in all these different situations, because everybody has something that we can learn from, and start working with these people, right? We're not going to tell everybody to go into politics. We're not going to tell everybody to go in and call out the government and go after them in the ways that every other person is doing. But there are support roles that people can do. Find out something that you're good at and bring that to the table, because we need to have a bunch of people doing a bunch of different things. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Essentially, we need communities again. We don't have communities anymore,
Yes.
right? Like, I live in an apartment building here in Halifax, and I couldn't tell you the name of one of my neighbors. And that's on me on some level. It's weird now, and we've been kind of separated from each other so much that that's normal. You would almost feel awkward approaching your neighbor and saying like, "Hey, my name's, JP. I live right over there. It's nice to meet you. What's your name?" Like, people would find that almost off-putting, but that's something that we used to do naturally. And now it's not happening. So we're disassociated from ourselves in that regard. Before I throw it over to you right quick, though, I want to appeal to the audience. Listen, my show is heavily suppressed. I used to do this by myself and get over 1,000 live viewers. I have less than 50 presently. So if you guys could please share the stream, the organic reach is all I get now. It's very advantageous for me. So I'll throw it back over to you, Dale.
Yeah, share the video. This is something that's important. Yes, and getting back in, like I said, the phones, like these things. This is contributing to destroying communities like crazy because we spend more time on this. Yes, we had social media that helped you to connect with people. And it was great when Facebook first came out. You got to talk to people that you didn't see from high school or elementary school that you didn't see for years and years and get to catch up. And then you were able to, talk to your family that were like across the globe without having to pay, the ridiculous long distance charges and so forth. So it was a good idea. But then after that, it was used as a conditioning tool to change the way that we do things. So we have to start doing things simple like unplugging. Don't give your kids social media. Don't. Right? Like these are things that we're going to have to do things to make our lives harder. I had to study technology in school and the effect of technology on people. And we got to study the Rockefellers and so forth. So a lot of people are saying conspiracy theory. I'm like, I learned this in school. They were straight up gangsters, right? And they ran their business like a cartel. And the one thing that they understood, the more convenience that people had from technology, the more dependent they became, and they traded freedom as a result. And so the push for technology isn't just for the benefit of mankind, it's for the benefit of taking away people's freedom because they become dependent upon the luxury. Because we as human beings, we will take the path of least resistance. And so if you keep showing a very low resistance path, people are naturally going to go to this because we avoid threat. And this is what these people fundamentally know. And am I sitting down and saying technology is bad? No, I'm not saying technology is bad. It's neither bad nor good. It's a piece of it's a machine. It's a technology. It doesn't think. It doesn't know good or evil. It's the people behind it. And so that's where we have to understand that somebody is putting this for some reason. And if they're trying to take most of your time, it's probably not a good thing because we have to take time for ourselves and our families most important. Right?
Yeah, I agree, man. Technology could easily be utilized by the people to ensure their freedom, as well as it could be to suppress us or to condition us, like you said. Look at the gun, the firearm, for instance. There's countries that fought themselves into independence, into self-governance using firearms. There's other places where the governments use the firearms and have a monopoly on violence, and they're more subjugated. So it is totally neutral, and it is affecting us. I like what you said about social conditioning. I've been saying this a lot. Like, I look at social media as a sophisticated algorithmic propaganda tool where the user becomes the product and the propaganda, and it fuels the division, man. If you're being if it's racialist division or ideological division, the left-right thing, it's the culture war grifters that are at the top of the algorithms. It's incentivizing them to continue. And when average people start to venture on, they get sucked in camp A or camp B. And they can't see past the division to the core of our issues. So they don't attempt to have solidarity with people. Listen, we all have more in common than we do otherwise. That's just a reality. What we don't have, the people we don't have in common with are the bankers and the billionaire class. I'm not saying this in a Marxist regard. I'm not a Marxist, but I mean, That's where the problem is. Like it's too much control being coming from this external force. It's like I said, it's not our governments as much as the people above them.
And I'm not against business and capitalism. And actually, what they're doing isn't capitalist with the way that you're seeing so many extreme billionaires are coming out, especially after 2020. Because how did they start gaining the reach that they're doing? They artificially removed the small businesses, which is the lifeblood of the country. That is the greatest aspect of the capitalistic system, is the small business. And it's what keeps the capitalist system running in the way that it should, because there's that direct accountability to the people that you are servicing. When you begin to have people far away, removed from the population that they're serving, there is that lack of accountability. And when you take away accountability, this is where criminal behavior breeds. And so when they're wiping this out, they're creating a society of oligarchs. We're going back to a feudal system, which isn't capitalism. It is lord and vassal, and then the peasants, the peons. And guess what? We're the peons. So why are we sitting down in this situation where we're going to do that? So we want to go back to an actual capitalistic structure where there is that level of accountability and so forth that is there in our society. And that's what we need to go back to, accountability.
Yeah. We definitely have a neo-feudalist society right now. This is not capitalism. It hasn't been capitalism at any point in my lifetime. It was better. We had more privileges back then, but this oligarchy, I mean, if you want to get into the history of conspiracy lore, a seminal point would be 1913 with the establishment of the Federal Reserve. Another seminal point would be Bretton Woods Agreement, 1944 or 45, I believe, right after or towards the end of World War II, coming off the gold standard. All of these things was this oligarchical class consolidating their power. And they've perfected the art of manipulating the public. Like, we've been in full psyop since the 1960s, right through America, with the television, with the programming. It's funny, that word too. It is programming.
Yes.
It's not entertainment. It's to normalize things that weren't normal. But with that said, that's the Goliath. I say it's like Goliath standing on top of a mountain. That's the hill that we face in front of us. And we have to, number one, we have to wake people up. So with that is a good segue for me to appeal once again to the audience. If you could please share this stream, it's very advantageous, because X was free for a moment. X really was free speech. It wasn't suppressed reach. Like, I garnered a big audience that cannot see my content anymore. I believe that scared I think that truly scared the ruling class. And they forced Musk, or Musk is in on it, whatever. I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole, but Musk is now complying. I think it scared them because they realized how precarious their narratives are. I think they get ahead of themselves and overconfident. They don't realize that the truth shines the light. So if you could speak truth well, and you have that sense of logos, I mean, it really wakes people up, because once you explain things to them, they can't unsee that. They can't unlearn that.
Yes, and what people have to understand is, let me just actually go back to kind of the thing with Musk. People have to remember Elon Musk. He's got Asperger's, right? When you start putting people that have, like, for example, Asperger's, autism, and certain things, they're easier to manipulate than the average person, right? And it doesn't matter whether they're smart. They can be pressured in certain ways that other people can't. And at the end of the day, regardless of what he does or doesn't want to do, he does not have full control of every single person in his organization. So these are things that people have to consider. Yeah, you see the guy there. I can't say what he does know or what he doesn't know. All I can see is what he comments. But these are things that people need to consider when they're looking at these things. So one of the biggest things that we can do, because we want to talk about solutions, you need to start thinking critically. For example, the fiat currency. What is fiat currency? It's nonsensical, because it's not, before, when you used to get a dollar backed on the gold standard, this dollar was worth X amount of gold, so that you could go in and take that dollar in and get your chunk of gold if you wanted to. That's really the principle. It was just to say that instead of carrying, you know, a couple of pounds of gold to go out and buy this big building or whatever the case it was, I could give you this money, and the banks or whatever were the ones who repository have held the gold, right? So this is why it was the gold standard. When you took that off, it's like, okay, I have X amount of debt. I promise to pay my debt, and so they're going to say we're going to value your dollar based on you're saying that you're going to promise to pay this debt. That is absolute nonsense. So essentially, we're working for monopoly money, and the fruit of our labors are being taken by other people, where they're getting the things that are tangible, like the resources, like the land and the natural resources, while we give up our labor for shiny trinkets, shiny pieces of paper.
Now, I've been learning about a different system. It's called Douglas Social Credit. It's very interesting. It's very pro free enterprise. It's anti-authoritarian. It's anti-communist. But it's anti-crony capitalism too. It's actually a distributist monetary system. But credit wouldn't be issued, or currency wouldn't be issued by an international, supranational structure. It would be done on a national level. We would all maintain our national sovereignty that way. In fact, I don't know how we can maintain any semblance of national sovereignty without doing that. As long as we've designated a group of private bankers to loan our nation's money, we're always under them. So I think we require just transformational monetary reform. How do we accomplish this? I would say by the same way we were saying we influence the government. We start to create a public demand. We start to inform and educate people and get them talking about this. The issue isn't black and white. It's not left and right. It's up and down. And again, I'm very anti-Marxist. I'm very anti-communist. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something better. I'm talking about an economy that serves the people of their nation, not a nation that serves an economy.
I'll tell you right now, I have more in common with a white man or any other race that are Canadian than I do with a black person in Africa. And a white people have more in common with a black person that's Canadian or any other race that's Canadian than they do with people in Europe, especially when you go into like Eastern Europe and so forth. Fundamentally very different, even in Western Europe, because two of my brother-in-law are European. It came straight from Europe. Their cultures are very different in many ways, especially like, for example, like the level of socialist behavior I'm like, absolutely not would I ever raise my child in Europe. There's no way, right? Like, I mean, I wouldn't raise my child in any socialist country, right? Canada is socialist enough as it is, and I don't like the direction that it's going. But in other places, it's too far gone. So you people have to understand that. And when you, especially in America, like, I mean, and I'm sure people in Canada, people outside of Canada look the same. People that live in these countries have way more in common than they do with other places. And that's where we have to understand that we have a common set of values and goals. And if people don't want to abide by those are the ones that are the problem, not the people that are different than you. Because I mean, go to Eastern Europe or the Balkans or something like that and see how they, as a white person, see how your life is going to be the same. It's not, right? And I know if I went to some place in Africa, it's not going to be the same. So I like it here. I want to fight for the country that I live in, right? And that's where we need to start getting back on top of that. And sure, were the white people the ones who helped build this country? Of course they were. I'm happy that the country's here and I want to contribute to it, right? And that's really where we're at. We need to start forgetting about the things that separate us and focus on the things that we have in common, because the people that are above us, they are betting their lives on the fact that our human nature is going to take the best of us. And they're actually doing things to pour gasoline on the fires of division as opposed to that. And we have to overcome that. That's really it.
Yeah, we're up against something that's evil in my estimation, and we don't win against evil by fomenting more hatred and vitriol and division. We defeat it with love, with unity, with finding solidarity on a core of principles that we can all kind of get behind. And again, I'll say it sounds a little corny or cliche, but we always have more in common than we do otherwise. And this is what we have to focus on. Like, I've been saying a lot, like, it's crazy to me how malleable people are, because I could meet a relatively intelligent, decent human being, and they're really like seemingly smart. They seem like they have integrity, but then like you bring up something where they can interpret someone as a member of an outgroup, like politics. Oh, well, it's those dumb libs, as if they're subhuman. Like, I want to do that outgroup bias now. So if I can now interpret you as my political foe, you're a dumb lib. I can dehumanize you, and I could rationalize in my own mind doing far worse than that. And that's that division that's in all of us, and we have to be able to see past that, or we get nowhere.
Yeah, speaking of this, and we have to realize that the colonization tactics that were used in other countries as empires began to colonize are being used on us. And I'll give you an example here. The colonies for example, the King of England had over here, they were not all treated the same. The Canadian colonies were treated very different than the 13 colonies. And this is the reason why the 13 colonies, they revolted, and the Canadians did not, because they were like, Canada was like the king's favored son. That's literally what happened. And so they had two different treatments between different colonies. One revolted, one did not. And this is why our systems developed the same in different ways. And they were using these tactics to subjugate and help to keep order over here amongst their own people. You have to understand that when it comes down to finance and people who believe they have a divine right to rule, you are not the same as them, right? Like, just because, and you go to any kingdom in any part of the world, and this is generally the case, unless the king or somebody loves God and is going to follow the will of the people, they're going to tend to go to this way. So we have to start looking at it as, what is their actions towards us? And this is where we then have to start thinking, how are we going to change public opinion or perception from these people? Because we have to control them. We have to restrain them. We're not restraining individual people, but we're restraining them within the job that they were given as a public servant. And I don't care whether it's a constitutional monarchy or whatever, they sit down and say, well, the crown is to have on control. Really, how well did that work when the crown had top-down control in a lot of countries? They revolted. And America is a very good example of this. So they know they can only go so far, and we have to constrain them within those limits. And that's why one of the things that we did were the petitions for redress, because constitutionally speaking, that tells the government that this is the final straw, and that this is the strongest piece of thing that you could do, even within the Westminster parliamentary system.
So I got to go back to the colonial era for a moment here, because
Yes.
I've been reading about this recently, and now a lot of people know that Benjamin Franklin had to educate a lot of the colonists. He wanted to turn them on to concepts such as liberty and self-determination. So he made the Poor Richard's Almanac, and he made it very entertaining, and it was popular, and it was distributed amongst the American colonies. Now, he actually famously came to Quebec. He came up into Canada to see if he could convince the Canadian colony to getting on board with this. And he couldn't. And he said, and he in his writings, they indicate this, that he attributes it to the education level of the colonists in Canada. A lot of them came from the French peasantry, and the illiteracy rates were through the roof. They didn't care about lofty ideals such as liberty or self-determination. So he just viewed it as that was a huge hurdle. Now, where he was able to successfully educate a lot of the American colonists, the original the colonies, he was able to accomplish this. But in Canada right now, it's a similar thing with the political literacy or the economical literacy that's preventing us from seeing the problems. Of all the Western democracies, Canadians are the furthest behind realizing what's going on.
Yes, and this is one of the, you touched on something that was important, but what they didn't say, yes, there was the influence of the French, and then what they did with the British that were here, because they called all of Canada at one point Quebec, right? Because when it talked about the province in the Declaration of Independence, that was referring to the province of Quebec, which they signed the Quebec Act, which just pretty much made all of what we knew of Upper and Lower Canada was called Quebec. And so you had the English speaking people that were treated a certain way, and they were then a lot of them were vassals of the king, and they allowed the French because the French were, yes, less educated, they had the language barrier and so forth, so they could keep them largely ignorant, which is what they're doing in Quebec today with all the people that don't speak English. They don't understand what's going on because they're propagandized. It's the same type of tool that's being used, and Canadians are heavily propagandized like crazy, and we have to kind of break away from that and start utilizing the independent media. When we were talking offline, I just want to circle on something before I go back to you.
Mhm.
When the guy that came up to Canada, I can't remember his name for the life of me. I can see his face and everything, but I can't remember his name. But he was an American that came up to Canada, and he said that the agents of the CCP, they're not Chinese, they're white guys like me. And he was an Italian guy. He's like, they're Italian like me. And I can look in right now in the independent media right now, and I can tell you which people are pushing the ideology of the CCP because of the things that they're doing. Because if you're sitting down and you're focused more on division, you're doing the work of not the people. The people that are there that are working, that I see that are getting the most suppression, are the ones that are actually trying to bring people together to deal with this, because this is not a political issue. This is a moral. Yes, it is to a certain. I'm not saying a party politic issue. Sure, it's a political issue because your government's bringing in totalitarianism, but this isn't a left-right issue, right?
No,
Because
God, no.
no, so we have to. It's an us versus the overlord issue, the common man and the overlord. That is what it is, because we're getting overlords and oligarchs that are putting top-down control on us, and that's not the way it's got to go.
Well, I would go as far as to say this is if we're successful, man could break free of debt slavery and usury. Like that's what we are. We live in a world that's predicated on scarcity. We don't like the inequity. I used to be more firm libertarian. I read Milton Friedman. I read everything Thomas Sowell ever wrote, and I liked their arguments for the necessity of debt and all that. Like I really thought like, yeah, it's good, but like, no, man, I've learned a lot since then. I don't think it's good. I think it ensures that there's going to be this control over people. And with the communism stuff, like, I mean, the modern Chinese Communist Party with Deng Xiaoping, it was set up with the tutelage of Henry Kissinger. Quite famously, he was on the cover of Time magazine in the 80s with Deng Xiaoping. And Deng Xiaoping wasn't a Marxist. He was a pragmatist. He wanted to modernize the Chinese economy. So I think there was a lot of money from the West that set that up. And I think that's the model that the elites want to push on us. It's way more similar to fascism than communism, where communism will be kind of predicated on the proletariat seizing the means of production and then a dictatorship of the proletariat. It's still just as gross. It's who do you want to be subjugated under, the people or a banking oligarchy? But I think it's a false dichotomy. And I think it's one that a lot of people can't see past. But like what I see in the West is I'm afraid of our own leaders pushing us into a fascist society than I am. And I know the Chinese are very ambitious, and no doubt they have their agents doing things, but I think it's a little overstated.
Well, like you said, like you talked about Henry Kissinger, and I've told this to people. China was built by Western money.
Yes.
China is still controlled by Western money. That even started going back to Hong Kong and so forth, and then it just progressed. And when you're seeing Chinese policy, it's being still driven by Western money, not the average Western ideal, but these people who want to have more control.
Yes.
And when you look at globalization, it's Western money that drove it, because Western money was what's driving the entire globe, and it still is. And as other economies are rising, they're done so by this Western money. And so at the end of the day, whether you want to call it the deep state, whether you want to call it the globalists, whatever the fact of the matter is, these are all these excessively rich people that are using countries as proxies to do their will. because they don't have the guns. So they get the guys that control the guns, the armies and so forth, to do their will and to enforce their dogmas. So when you're looking at China or whoever it is, I don't care who it is. And this is why when people sit down and say, oh, it's this country, I said, you're nuts. You don't understand how countries work and how finances work, right? The countries are just the proxies for these people who have money. And,
yes.
And that when you understand this, it doesn't become about race. It doesn't become about anything. It becomes follow the money and who is doing the crime.
And that, sir, is when you're truly awake. That's when you truly get it. I'm telling you, man, that's what it is. Because like waking up was a process for me. When I was on here 3 years ago supporting Pierre Poilievre. That's how naive I was. And it's been quite the journey over the last 3 years, learning, speaking to different people. I'm researching. I read excessively, man. Like my reading schedule is immense. But with that said, Dale, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I hate that I didn't realize that it's been an hour. I actually have an appointment. I was enjoying the conversation so much, I forgot about the questions too. So that's, you know what, man, it's a good reason for us to do this again in the near future.
Yes. And I want people, like, I mean, go out and look at what we did. Like, you're going to see traction coming out of the United States and hopefully light a fire, because we did petitions here to the federal government beforehand and to the Alberta government. And these are things that people can use, and it covers literally every aspect of what has gone wrong in our society. It's like a Declaration of Independence style type of grievance, because that's where we're at. And the Americans, they may not be as educated because they kept us more educated but more indoctrinated here in Canada, but they are ready to fight. They understand that they had to do this, and we have to be ready to fight for our freedom. And I'm not saying literal fight, but I mean we still have to exercise that fight, because we're having a war of ideas, a culture war, as you want to call it, whatever, but it's up here, and we need to use the same type of strategies and to move forward. And we need to work together. And this is the one thing I wanted to say quickly with the petition. The way it's structured, the biggest problem that we're having in all of our countries is the judicial branch. And this is across the West. They are the ones that are the kingmakers. They are the ones that are protecting the rackets and allowing all of this criminal activity to continue. The problem is that the other two branches, the executive, the legislative, are the ones that need to restrain them. And whether you're American or not, I would suggest everyone go out and read the Federalist Papers, because they explain how the three branches are supposed to work. And this is everywhere. So what now, when we have we have all these different things, people didn't understand why I was putting all these things together. I'm like, no, what you see is underlying is the judicial branch is the problem, and all of these different things, whether it be COVID, the trafficking, like all of these issues, the judicial branch is the cause, and we have to get them to fix it. This is the only way our civilization is going to go forward, is to have that judicial branch restrained. So let's go and do some homework and start doing things to work together, because I don't care what you do, just let's all attack the same enemy, and we need to get the elected officials to do our will. This is the only way we go forward, by pressuring them, and a lot of public pressure, to do our will.
That's a good positive note to end it on. Before we do go though, Dale, I do want you to tell everyone how they could find you, your social media, and how they can follow you.
Yes, at DJS Richardson on X, True Social, and Getter. Not on Getter very much, but more so X. You can reach the Karis Project on Rumble, YouTube, Vocal, and Facebook.
Awesome. I didn't even know some of those platforms existed.
Yeah.
All right, brother. It was awesome talking to you. I sincerely, genuinely enjoyed our conversation. So we will be in touch, and we'll do it again in the very near future.
Yes, we'll do that. Thank you for having me.
All right. And I would like to appeal to everyone once more. I get most of the views well after the live broadcast. So if you could please share this, it still helps. With that said, cheers. We'll see you next time.